Happy Tuesday. We're here from the Connect Network TV. My name is Pilar Chapa. I am the Executive Director of the Connect Network. And I am so excited to have you here for the June Mastermind. So let's get right to it into today. Today's guest is none other than Sonia. Sonia Mpower. She is a Forbes coach, and she has phenomenal speaking skills. When you watch her, you just can't help but be mesmerized and captivated. And she's just so eloquent and graceful. And she's also been recognized as Yahoo as top coaches to follow. And so I would just like to introduce you to her, and please welcome Sonia with me. Hi, Sonia.
Hello, Pilar. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be back with the Connect TV network.
Hi, nice to have you back. I'm so glad to hear, and it's so great to finally to connect with you in person. So since we've been exchanging.
Pilar.
So you can go ahead and take it away from here. So today is all about getting right to the actionable items and tips. So congratulations to our VIPs for showing up early. So please drop your name and what do you do inside the chat on the right. So we have one by VIP here today. So we're gonna go ahead and pull you up. Hi, Natalie. Good to see you. Glad you can make it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Always good to be here.
Hi, Natalie. Great to see you again.
Thank you. Always good to see you.
So like I said, for those of you on Facebook Live or the YouTube, please drop your name. Let us know where you're from. And then today's mastermind will be very conversational. So if you could please just drop your questions. So we're going to go ahead and take it from here. Okay. So let's see. One moment. So Sonia, can you share an example of a powerful story that had a significant impact on your business or personal brand? And what made it so effective?
Okay, well, that's a great question. And I'm excited to share with you many tips and tools on how to leverage storytelling, the science and art of storytelling. And before we jump into any examples, I want to share with you why storytelling is so important, if you don't mind. So, who do you think is the most powerful person in the world? There could be a myriad of answers to this question, but according to Steve Jobs,
I was going to say right now, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Okay, so that's interesting because I was actually referencing a quote by Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs said that the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. Because out of all forms of communications that are available to us, storytelling is the most powerful. And one of the types of communication that we respond to the most. It engages our brain and our heart in a way that other forms of communication simply cannot do. And you see, people have been telling stories for centuries, transferring wisdom and knowledge from one generation to another, which is why storytelling is in our DNA. As much as we want to believe that people make decisions based on sound logic, data, and any reasons, it's simply not the case. The majority of decisions that we make are based on our emotions. And for those of you who are in business, who have clients, who have coaching clients, who have buying clients, keep that in mind that your clients also make decisions based on emotions. So everything that we're going to share with you today is going to empower you with tools that you can directly apply to your business and create that authentic emotional connection with clients and elevate your results. So you asked me, Pilar, to share a story. If I were to share one story, it would be this. I have been coaching clients in public speaking and communications for over 6 years now. And one time, a client came to me who was an incredible expert in her field. She was in the travel industry, was a phenomenal expert, and she had so much knowledge and experience guiding people through European historical treasures. But when it came to getting on camera to get a larger audience for her, she would become incredibly nervous. And I would even say not just nervous, but she was paralyzed by fear of public speaking and fear of the audience. She really wanted to elevate her career, but she couldn't do that without speaking to a larger audience. So when she came to me as a client, we started working on this fear and peeling back the layers and trying to find out what is the root of this fear. And through doing emotional and spiritual work with this client, we found that the root of the fear and why she was so closed off is because she was traumatized by a very abusive romantic relationship, intimate relationship. And so anytime she had to face the audience, as a self-protective mechanism, she would shut down and completely close off. So it was her protective mechanism of her nervous system not to be exposed. And so through doing a lot of emotional work and spiritual work and digging, we were able to get her familiar with this fear. And I always say, when you have to overcome a fear, you want to get very familiar and almost friendly with this and be able to sort of look the bear in the eye and know what it is. And when you know what it is, when you can name it, you can take its power away. And by getting more familiar with that fear, understanding what it is, and also doing separately some healing work, she was able to conquer that fear. And not only is she now giving powerful talks that are pertaining to luxury travel and the history of the regions that she takes her clients to, but most importantly, she can now tell a story and help other people heal from similar traumatic experiences that she went through. So actually, she's now using her fear and that block as an instrument to elevate others and help others heal from similar experiences.
I love that so much. What I love that this is more than just public speaking that you're coaching on. You are working with them at a spiritual, emotional level, you know, even as down to like you even mentioned, like right, helping her with her nervous system was on flight or freeze, right?
Absolutely.
So I can only imagine, or I cannot imagine what all that you do besides just getting them from behind the scenes doing that work, inner work, to the outer work of what they really came to you for. And so I can only imagine you probably do maybe meditation, breath work, or I've seen your Instagram and I see like, oh, she seems like my kind of people. I'm into all that too. So I love that.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right, Pilar. And Natalie knows because Natalie has been to my courses and classes, and Natalie knows that my principle to teaching public speaking is unconventional. I have designed this method of teaching that relies on 4 pillars of communication. And the first one is spiritual, then we have emotional, we have physical and intellectual aspects of public speaking and communication. And of course, I train my clients on leveraging all of those 4 different aspects to make it really impactful. Now, as far as storytelling goes, if I may share a couple tips that will help our audience. So when we tell stories, the reason people respond to stories so much better than to information, any analysis, any graphs or numbers, is because it's an emotional response. And the reason it becomes an emotional response is because when you tell stories in a certain way, you can trigger certain hormones in our bodies to be released. And the hormones that you can trigger with storytelling are cortisol, oxytocin, endorphins, and dopamine. So I'd love to talk about that if I may.
Yes, please. You have my attention. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the hormone of cortisol, what is it and why it's important in storytelling? It's an attention grabbing hormone. It's a hormone of stress. So as storytellers, we have to use it lightly. It's just like if you're cooking a meal, you're not going to put too much salt into it. You're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper. So cortisol is that spicy salt and pepper. It's attention grabbing and it's a hormone of stress. We were talking about fight or flight reaction. Cortisol is responsible for that reaction. So anything in our story that conveys danger, risk, any cliffhanger or plot twist is going to release cortisol in our body. So it's really attention grabbing. Now, how can we do that in storytelling? Well, one way we do that is by creating suspense in our story. Of course, you need time to do that. So, how can we create this suspense? Well, there are several ways of doing that. You can tell a story in a chronological order with buildup, or you can tell a predictable story with unpredictable ending. Now, another thing you can do as a storyteller is stop in the middle of a dramatic action and then go back to the beginning. So, in other ways, you're going to tell a story, reach the climatic situation, and stop in the middle of that dramatic action and not give away the resolution. So you're going to keep them hanging, right? That's the cliffhanger. And then you will go back to the beginning and tell what led to this situation. And there is another really great technique. It's called in medias res. And in Latin, it's called in the middle of action. It means in the middle of action. So you can start telling a story in medias res right in the middle of the dramatic action. And this is a technique that is used a lot in TV writing and in films, where we start right in the middle of something fascinating happen. One of the greatest TV shows of our time, Breaking Bad. If you go back to the very first episode, it starts with a very dramatic scene, right? And a very unusual scene. So that would be an example of in medias res. So I want to stop to see if we have any questions from YouTube or Facebook and address those.
Yes. Let me. Okay. So Jody K. Edwards says that she needs to get better at suspense building.
Aha. Okay, so this is exactly what we're talking about. So I just gave you a couple examples of how to build suspense, right? Go in the chronological order and with a build-up, or start in medias res. In medias res is probably one of the most effective techniques, and I'll give you an example of that. If I were to tell a story of what happened to me one time as a public speaker, when I was working as a brand speaker, I would start with this. I was standing in the middle of the stage. My equipment went down. The microphone was barely working, and the slides, the visuals that the marketing team has been working on for 3 months, went completely black. I was looked at by 700 people in the room, and I could see the executives in the back look at me in complete fright and stress. And I remember my heart dropping to my knees. I had no idea of how I was going to continue this presentation without any visuals. I remember my heart beating so fast and everything sort of suspended in time. And the executive president was looking at me with this look, Sonia, you got to do something. And I remember how my mind all of a sudden jolted into this decision that I'm going to get off the stage and get right into the audience with a microphone and start having a genuine and authentic conversation with them. Right, so that's an example of in medias res, where you drop the audience right in the middle of the dramatic action.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that there's a lot of people out there that really benefited from. I have actually a few questions, but unless you had something that you wanted to share before I start asking any question, I don't want to take anything.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit. So if the question is about the suspense, then
Mhm.
I will address that, but I wanted to share a little bit more techniques
Yes,
on
please.
how to trigger the hormones. So other hormones that you can trigger with storytelling, a very important hormone is oxytocin. And oxytocin is the hormone of love, right? So when a baby is born, a mother is really bonded with the child because a large amount of oxytocin is released. So, what does it have to do with storytelling? Oxytocin is important because you want to create empathy. You want to bond with the audience. And if you're telling a story about not about yourself, but about a different character, then you're going to want for your audience to bond with that character and root for that character. Can we do that? When people feel that they share the same hopes and struggles and wins as the character or as you as the main character, they're immediately going to feel more attached to you, more empathetic. And when you are creating those different characters, you want to make sure that those characters are relatable and multidimensional, that they're human, right? So, oxytocin is another really important hormone that we can use in storytelling, the hormone of love. And then endorphins. When do we have this hormone released? When we tell jokes, right? I know, Natalie, you have a great sense of humor. So anytime you tell a joke, when people can laugh, endorphins are released. Also, when you give the audience resolution or hope, even if you tell difficult stories, maybe on topics that are very serious, you might be telling a story, educating your audience on human trafficking or other serious topics that are tragic. But even then, at the end, you always want to give your audience some hope or resolution or a way where they can participate. And when we do that, then endorphins get released. And then dopamine is the hormone of pleasure. It's a feel good hormone, also great for positive resolution. So, those are, I would say, if you know how to use cortisol, how to get that released through storytelling, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, then you are in good shape.
I know Jody K. Edwards said that example was super helpful. And she asked, with social media attention spans being short, would you recommend these be just a couple sentences or seconds, since it's just a 7 to 30 second video, for
Yeah,
example?
well, that is $1 million question because yes, people's attention span gets shorter and shorter. And I even hear that for some TED Talks in the past, speakers were given 18 minutes of time. And now for many TED stages, it is reduced to 10 and 12 minutes. So I think Jody is right about being mindful about people's attention span. And knowing how much time you have is going to impact the structure of your story. And we're going to talk about structure later on. Obviously, if you have 10 to 12 minutes, you can develop interesting structure. There is pedal structure. I'll talk about it in a little bit. There is the dip structure. But when you are limited to only 60 or 90 minutes of time, it is hard to implement all of the elements of storytelling. So, if you really want to use storytelling on social media, it is a good idea to create a series. So maybe your whole story takes 7 minutes, but why not record it in 1 minute or 90-second segments and then introduce it little by little, and that will also keep your audience waiting for more content.
Thank you, Sonia. That was very helpful. And if I could add to what you said about, maybe doing a full, 1 minute or 5 minutes, like you said, and it's like doing a content batch and then cut it up into reels?
I would say try it and see what resonates best with your audience, because it depends on the audience. I'm the type of viewer who wants longer videos, longer format, but most people, I believe, still prefer shorter format. And I noticed the other day that TikTok now allows you to post 10-minute video segments. So they're open to longer format videos as well now.
And I noticed too in Instagram, Instagram's getting more time in the stories too.
Yes.
In the grid.
So I think the operative word is stories. People are realizing that stories are the most impactful thing, whether it is on social media or on stage. So I think there's going to be more room made for storytelling in general.
Is there any comments or any questions that anyone has? Natalie, do you have any questions or anything you wanted to add?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. Just based on everything, obviously, tons of gems already getting through this. But I recently had a podcast, and I'm trying to use it and how it's going to be delivered. And now I know how. So I already knew a full one and segments, but now I'm going to do each question 1 minute. Click here for the full interview. Mm-hmm. But each question will have its own minute and a half max, based on the reels on Instagram. And then I'm slightly inspired to, I'm on TikTok. I don't use it. I use it sometimes with my nieces and nephew. For me, that's fun. But I think I'm going to just delete everything and start from scratch and start with these 1 minute videos, leaving them for more, since you said they're 10 minutes. So I can have the full 10 minutes on there with the 1 minute, and then make TikTok all about just this storytelling.
Yes, I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you.
Now, and one thing I want to point out, because we have, I know usually your channel, the Connect Network, has a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs. I want to point out how storytelling can be used for branding. So, because great stories create an empathetic bond between the main character and the audience, when the audience feels, oh, this business owner or this brand is just like me, they can put themselves in the shoes of your ideal client, right? That's what causes that emotional resonance, and it deepens the engagement. So for branding specifically, what I would recommend is start with your intention. And Natalie, you know through my courses how important intention, setting the intention, is for any type of communication. So the same here. What is your intention for this particular campaign? Is it to engage the audience? Is it to introduce them to the brand? Is it to educate them on the potential problem that you can help them solve, right? And you want to know your audience pretty well so you can create a mirror experience. So if you know, for example, for me, I know the majority of my audience, they have a fear of public speaking or nervousness about public speaking. So how can I create a mirror experience for them and tell them stories that will resonate with their challenge, right? So then we introduce that challenge. Let's say for me, it's overcoming the fear of public speaking. And the audience will have that mirror experience, and then show how can my product or services solve this issue, solve this challenge. And then why did I start this company? What is the heart behind my company and my services? And why would my ideal client love my services or my programs? Right? So you want to be able to answer those questions with a lot of clarity before you start creating storytelling for your brand. Pilar, did we lose you backstage?
Yes. Thank you, Sonia, for sharing that. That was really, really helpful. With you, I had a question about branding and using storytelling as branding, if I can ask.
Of course.
How can how could we integrate storytelling into our overall marketing? And you touched on it already about with content strategies to create a cohesive, impactful brand narrative.
That's a great question. There are several ways of doing that. I think first of all, it's important for people to know who you are. People buy you. So the more as a business owner you can put yourselves out there and tell a story of you and how you became who you are and why you feel passionate about providing certain services or a particular product, the more people get to know you personally, the better it is. And I'm going to add to that that vulnerability is a really important element here. If business owners always position themselves as these super successful people, that's great to create that confidence in your brand, but it's not enough. And vulnerability is another really important aspect. Brene Brown, who I love, and she's an expert in vulnerability, she said, vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. So, as you're working on your brand messaging and creating that marketing content, I would encourage you to embrace a vulnerability and share with the audience not only your wins, but also your challenges. Share with them when things were not so perfect, when you had to struggle, when you had to borrow money for your business or work 24/7 or sacrifice something. And when people can resonate with you and see that you are not that perfect picture of a success story, but a real human being, they start feeling more connected to you and being able to relate to you. And they will feel, okay, if Pilar was able to do that and she was able to overcome that challenge, maybe I can too. She's a human being, right? So I strongly encourage business owners to share the vulnerable parts of them as well as their successes. That is one thing we can do. Another thing that you can create for your brand in terms of storytelling is the stories of your clients. Whether you tell them through the third person or you might ask your clients to share their stories as well. And a lot of times people will share testimonials with us and tell us how much they appreciated our services. Well, you can ask your clients to record that on video and give a specific example of how they were able to use your product or services that elevated them or helped them or solved their problem. And you can guide them a little bit and just ask them, tell me a story. Just let's talk about it and you tell me a story. And that is really powerful as well. I hope that answers your question, Pilar.
Yes, it does. And it brings up another question.
Okay.
So there are a lot of business owners out there that that do not show their face and don't share themselves too much, and so just tying into vulnerability, and they just want the company to do its thing without their face attached to it. But we know that there's a lot of power in adding to our face, and the audience wants to know, okay, you have a successful company.
Yes.
Who is this person? So could you touch on a little bit about that? And I was also wondering on how you work with, this might be tied into it, I'm not sure. But I was wondering, when you work with clients on their storytelling, how do you work with them in aligning their overall business goals and objectives? Is like there a framework process to that, or strategic storytelling consistency?
That is such a juicy question. Well, let's start with business owners being willing to face the audience and actually being able to open up and be vulnerable. You're absolutely right, Pilar. Not everyone is willing to do that. And I have to say, you can be successful as a brand without putting your face out there. But you have to be very strategic about that. And you should still leverage storytelling if you want to go that route, because you can tell the story of your brand without showing your face. You can hire brand speakers to tell your story. And I used to be one of them. I was the voice and the face of the brand that I personally did not own. So I would say, yes, you can do that. You still want to weave storytelling into your branding, whether it's the story of your brand, the story of your customer success, the story of your struggles. But if you can put your face out there and really face your clients and tell the story personally from your heart, it's going to magnify everything that you do, and it's going to elevate everything that you do. Because again, remember, customers don't make decisions through rational, and I don't mean to offend everyone. I'm sure some decisions we do make rationally and logically, but the majority of buying decisions are made impulsively and emotionally. So if you want to really elevate your brand and maximize everything that you do, start sharing your emotions through storytelling. And it cannot be done in a manipulative way. It has to be genuine and authentic, because if you try to do it in a manipulative way and attach ROI to your emotional vulnerability, it's just going to fall apart, because people will sense that this is not authentic. So how do we connect that? How do we connect our ROI with storytelling? Well, because I want to go back to the 4 pillars of communication. And the most important pillar for me is spiritual. Yes, I can teach you the basic techniques and strategies of effective presentation. I can teach you presentation literacy and give you storytelling tools and techniques. But where I start with my clients is always spiritual. And most clients who come to me, they are business owners, they're company owners. They started a company for a reason. Maybe they no longer remember why they started the company, but I go through the process of reminding them. And usually the answer doesn't come from our intellectual brain. The answer comes from our heart and our spirit. If you are a business owner, I would encourage you to meditate on these questions and perhaps take yourself on a date with you and go into nature and ask yourself this question: why did I really start my company? What was the purpose behind that? Who did I want to support, or what problem did I want to solve? And how is that connected with my God-given talents and power that comes from nature, my natural talents? And usually what you do is connected with your natural talents. And if I could do anything in the world and money wasn't an issue, what would I want to do? Right? So you take yourself through these questions. And oftentimes what you'll find out is that behind your desire to create a product or service, there is something bigger. And it's usually connected to your higher self, to, you call it whatever you want to call it, to your God-given gifts, to the universe, to your higher power. But usually there is a connection between that. So if you can tap into that and your true purpose and intention, and see your business as an extension of that, then it will be much easier to open up in front of your audience and share your true purpose and why you want to help them. Pilar, back to you.
So good. That was so good. I love that you really tied in to really that self-reflection and going back to your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. So we have a new visitor. So we have Michelle Watson. So Michelle Watson.
Michelle.
She is a she has her own nonprofit.
Okay.
And it is to support is to bring awareness to fentanyl. So for her, she has her own personal testimony with tied to that of her own personal experience with fentanyl, with a tragedy that happened in her life. So as part of her nonprofit, she would have to share her story and vulnerability to tie into her purpose of bringing that awareness. If you have any, so what do you? I'm sorry, I don't remember. I forgot. I lost it.
It's Michelle. It's such an important purpose that you have, and it's such an important mission. And as a parent, I want to thank you in advance for what you do and what you are going to do. Sharing tragic stories is not easy, and we have to be prepared for that. We have to find the right time for when we're ready to release that story. And if that tragedy is recent, maybe it's not the right time to share it in public. You can share it in writing, but maybe not in person until you're ready to release it, because it's going to trigger really strong emotions. But when you're ready to share that story, it is going to be the most powerful way for you to connect with your audience and to raise funds for this incredibly important cause. There is a way to work with emotions where you can use emotions as fuel to propel your message rather than being tripped by those emotions. But it's a process, and it's a process that I take my clients through. It does take some emotional work, and it also relies on the intellectual work. So sometimes we have to thank our intellect because it helps us balance our emotions. And I would be honored to work with you. I would love to connect with you and support you on that mission, and at least offer you a complimentary one-on-one session so I can help you in any way that I can to bring your story and your message forward. And I mentioned the intellectual work, and if we have the time, Pilar, I'd like to share the importance of structure, because a lot of times clients tell me, I have a hard time fitting my story within a certain period of time, or I tend to repeat myself, or I lose my point. So what can help with that? It's strong structure, right? And Natalie says yes, because she's familiar with this challenge. So what can we learn from the science of storytelling and the art of storytelling through structure? Well, there are different types of structures that you can use in storytelling, and they're completely different from giving a presentation or an educational talk. So the structure can be conflict. So every structure will have conflict, climax, and resolution. But in terms of timing, and in terms of the strategy of sharing the information, there are different structures. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to share with you 4 different structures of a story that might benefit you. The first one is mountain structure. Then we're going to talk about rise, fall, rise, which is also known as the dip structure. And then there is pedal structure, and I talked about in media res. So mountain structure is when you're mapping the tension and drama, and you need to have time to do that. So we talked about social media. It will definitely require creating mini segments, mini episodes of 60 to 90 seconds to create an overall mountain structure story. So what it is, it's a series of small challenges to reach climax. So it will have beginning, build up, then another build up, then climax, resolution, and ending. So you need to have time it really requires time to create mountain structure. The most basic example of mountain structure storytelling is the 3 Little Piglets. All right, when we had the beginning, there was a setup. There were 3 little piglets, and they lived in the house. And one of them had a house made of straw. The other one had a house made of something else, right? So that's the beginning. Then the build up, when the drama starts developing, when the wolf comes and blows away one of the piglets' house, right? And then they all run to the other house, and it was made of sticks. And the wolf destroyed the other piglet's house, and they all had to run, right? Then there's climax, and then there is resolution and ending. So you need time to develop mountain structure, but they're really effective. Now, my favorite structure, especially when you want to bare your heart and bare your soul, is rise, fall, rise structure. And if the first type of storytelling required time, then this type of storytelling, rise, fall, rise, it requires vulnerability. So what you're going to do as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, somebody accomplished, you're going to start with highlighting your achievements. So for example, I would say I am an experienced public speaking and communication coach and a brand speaker myself. I have given over 500 talks to audiences between 300 and 1,000 people, and I've been coaching clients for over 6 years. I'm very honored to be a member of Forbes Coaches Council, and now I lead Forbes Public Speaking Group. Right? So I'm starting with a highlight. And then I'm going to drop into the time when I actually hit rock bottom. So I can say, but you know what? It didn't start like that. When I first came here from the former Soviet Union and I moved to a small apartment in Boston, I didn't have money, I didn't have friends, and I didn't have family. And I made a lot of bad decisions that put me in a very vulnerable situation where I could be taken advantage of financially and emotionally. And it became so bad that I was deeply depressed and felt that I had no way out and there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't have any family to fall back on, and I was embarrassed to tell my family that I was experiencing those issues. And I really felt that I had no way to go. And suddenly, I remembered about my power and my natural talent. I remembered how when I was back in the former Soviet Union, my friends would tell me, Sonia, you have such a way with language. You have such a unique power with words and how you express yourself so freely and how you can influence others. And I thought, well, can I leverage this power? What can I do with it? And I started applying it, the art of communication, little by little through work. And as I started using it through work, I started getting promoted and I started making more money. And then my social circles expanded and I became financially stronger and socially stronger. And I was able to break away from that toxic situation where I was being taken advantage of by my own spouse. And I felt so free and inspired by the art of communication and how it can elevate anybody's life that I decided to make it my calling and teach others how they can benefit from it, right? So this is an example of rise, fall, rise. When you talk about your accomplishments, then you talk authentically about not such a pretty situation. And then you show the audience how you were able to come out of that, and you take them on a journey. And as you do that, they can identify with your struggles and they can say, okay, if she was able to pull herself out of that, maybe I can too. Does that make sense? Do we have any questions or comments on that?
That was very, very good. Very, very good. You left me speechless. It was very, very moving. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Pilar. And then we have the pedal structure and we have in media res. So the pedal structure is also really effective, but it also requires time. And with pedal structure, it's basically multiple stories that have the same point. So if you are going to talk about the power of vulnerability, you might tell stories, little, maybe 3 stories, shorter vignettes that each point out the power of vulnerability, or the power of connection, or the power of giving back, whatever it is, right? So what you want to do, you want to decide on the purpose of your talk. Again, intention, really important. And then you create multiple stories supporting your point, so it becomes like a flower that connects in the middle. That's why it's called the petal structure. I see Natalie's making notes.
Yes.
Lots of notes and lots of great guidance and structure for what I'm doing right now. And this rise and fall was great because I know your story, but yet it hit harder this time. And it's so interesting because we said a lot of things are about emotion. But, you know, when you talked about your past as an actor and as a coach, I use this. So immediately it went to previous circumstances, inner monologue, all the things of my life that resonates with yours that brought me to my own personal, to when I moved and where I'm from and all that other good stuff. But it also happens to be that my younger cousin is moving from France to become a director. And she's arriving today. And thought she was going to take Uber and stuff. All this, to make a long story short, I was like, believe me, you're going to need me to come get you. LAX is crazy. Plus, you're new here. You don't even speak English. Uber is far. It's not even about the money. And so my mom called me today. I said, Mom, I remember when I moved here when I was 28 years old. And I was Burbank. It wasn't even LAX, an easier airport. And I stopped. I was like, I don't know if you know this, but I cried for about an hour. And I called my sister. I said, maybe I made a mistake. Because I felt so alone, because I have no friends here, no family here. I came to start a whole new life, a whole new dream. And I was able to feel my cousin being alone at this LAX. I was like, no way, I'm coming to get her. And then I said it, I was like, exactly, alone, this place. We come here, there's nobody here. There's this dream, it's so scary. But we take these risks, and just this rise and fall to tell the truth of where we started is so important.
Yes.
So thank you for reminding, and thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I'm so happy that it resonated, Natalie.
I cried. I had to go get a tissue. What can I do?
But this is all about sharing our human experiences. And that's why I always believe that communication is about giving, right? And whether you're giving a regular talk that is not structured as a story, or sharing a story, think about, what do I want to gift to my audience? Maybe today I want to share from the heart the experiences I had and the challenges I had to overcome, so they can see they're not alone if they're experiencing something different, something similar. Pilar, do we have any other questions from social? I quickly caught up on the chat here. And thank you, Jody K, for following me on Instagram.
There's not any questions right now in the chat. Let's see. If you don't have anything else that you wanted to share to go over, I know we want to announce some things that you have coming up. I would like to also ask a question.
Of course, no, go ahead with, you know me, Pilar. I can talk about this for hours. And I can share many tips and tools, but I would rather make it more interactive and address your question.
Okay. So for business owners, how can we incorporate storytelling? And as you said, the power of storytelling is really in the emotions. And as your example that you shared with us, it was the emotions were very powerful, very strong. I really felt them. So how can we take that skill set and integrate it into our internal communications and leadership practices to inspire and motivate our teams?
Oh, this is so great. Yes. And this is the aspect we haven't explored yet, is internal communication. The best way to connect with somebody is to tell them a story. And I would say, if you have to talk about a goal, talk about a specific strategy that your team wants to follow, tell them why. pull back the curtain and tell them why. Sometimes when we're in a rush, we're so busy, we say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to hit for the month or for the quarter. But if we slow down a little bit and explain why we need that, and maybe share a story of why this has importance, why this has significance. In the internal communication, oftentimes we share numbers, right? So when we tell our team that we need to hit a certain number, a number can be very abstract. So if you can paint a picture and create an analogy and tell the story behind the numbers, the team will usually follow our directive or direction much better. And I'll give you an example. I am a very passionate advocate for anti-human trafficking. And I have represented many organizations and partnered with many organizations to raise awareness and raise funds to prevent and to stop human trafficking. So I could tell people that currently human trafficking affects 26 million people in the world, right? And that is a sizable number. But still, in most people's mind, it's an abstract number, 26 million people. But what if I put it in a story? What if I say, currently, there are millions and millions of people who are trapped in human trafficking. And the amount of people who is currently impacted by human trafficking is the equivalent of the population of Australia. So imagine, what would we do as the world if we found out that the whole country of Australia is being held hostage against their will, being kept in horrendous conditions, physically and emotionally abused, and being forced to do physical labor or being used for sexual exploitation? What would we do as world leaders and as our humanity if we found out that this is going on, this is happening to the whole country of Australia? I'm sure the whole world would be up in arms and there would be some serious action taken to stop this from happening and to punish the criminals who caused this issue. But because the victims of human trafficking are so spread out and hidden, it is not as visible. And most people don't know that there's 26 million people, most of whom are children and women, that are trapped in human trafficking. And today I want to give you a way to stop this from happening in the future. Right? That's much more impactful than just saying 26 million people, because you're putting it in the perspective. So in your internal communication, you can use that as well to make an impact and to connect with your team so that they really care about the goal.
Thank you, Sonia. That was very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And do you have, I wanted to give you some time to cover anything else you wanted to cover. And then, of course, share any resources that.
Yes, of course. Well, one more tip that I wanted to share with you guys, and thank you again for joining us live on a busy afternoon. I wanted to talk about a really great technique that originates from my part of the world, and it's called the Chekhov's gun. And Chekhov's gun is a principle in writing that states that every element in the story must be relevant. So we talked about the importance of structure and how important it is for structure to hold everything together so that you don't veer off and get lost in your story. Well, it's also important to infuse details in your story, and you want to immerse your audience in sensory detail. You want to have visuals and create suspense and bring the characters to life and engage all of their senses. You want to tell the audience how something felt, on what was the color of the sunset, on how the clothes felt on the skin, or the coolness of the ocean breeze, right? You can engage audience's senses, but how do you know when it's too much? Well, you can use the principle of Chekhov's gun. Anton Chekhov, who was a Russian playwright, one time said that if you're going to hang a gun in a theater on a stage for your play, then somebody needs to shoot that gun. And I don't want this to be taken out of context, please, especially in our environment. What that means is that if you are going to introduce a detail, whether it is an object or a character, that detail needs to serve a purpose. If it doesn't serve any purpose and you're just elaborating because it's for some reason has significance to you but will mean nothing to the audience, then you need to cut that out of your story. And I'd love to be able to share more. There's so much that I can share on the art of storytelling, presentation, the delivery. We haven't even touched upon the physical aspect of storytelling and how important it is to have strong, powerful body language and be expressive with your gestures and vocal variety. That's a whole different aspect of storytelling, right? The presentation part of it. But because we are limited to an hour, I'm sharing the most important things that you can incorporate in your storytelling and start using now. So I encourage you, please connect with me on social media. I'm Sonia Mpower. And maybe Pilar, maybe you can put it in the comments for everyone. Sonia Mpower on Instagram. I am also on Facebook as Sonia Maslovskaya, public speaking coach. Thank you. And I do have a website where I share a lot of tips. As a matter of fact, Pilar, can we share the free resources with the audience?
Yes, please, of course.
So if you take that from our private chat, for some reason, I cannot put comments in the general chat. But I invite you to tap into my free resources. It's a video training. It's a brief video training where I share 3 tips on how to become a phenomenal and unforgettable speaker. And they're really easy but unique tips that you can use right away. So simply fill out the form. You will receive a video training. And when you do that, you will also be entered into a raffle to win a free seat in my 6-week course that's called From Fearful to Fierce. This is a new course that I will be releasing in the middle of July. And I only have 10 seats in that course, and 1 seat I'm going to raffle off to a lucky winner who fills out the form and stays in touch with me. So check out, thank you so much, Pilar, for posting that. Check out that link and connect with me. You'll get that video training and you will be entered into a raffle to win a free seat. And that course, I've done a lot of live courses. My courses are virtual. They're always live. They're not recorded. And I hold them for only 10 people maximum because I want to give you a lot of personal attention and coaching. And I've done courses on the science and art of storytelling, how to overcome the fear and anxiety of public speaking, and general presentation literacy. So what's great about this new course is that it combines all 3, and it's over a decade of my experience as a brand speaker and also as a speaking coach that I'm going to share with you during this course, about to be released. So please stay in touch with me and you will hear the details. And Pilar and the Connect TV team, thank you so much for having me back. I always enjoy connecting with you and meeting other business owners and sharing my tips.
Thank you so much, Sonia. We enjoyed having you as always, and a pleasure to finally connect with you. Y'all reach out to Sonia. I think every business owner needs to get your coaching, and just connect with her. And we will see you next time.
Wonderful. Bye, everyone. Bye, Jody. Bye,
Thank you.
Michelle. Bye, Natalie. Bye, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Happy
Bye.
speaking.